Good afternoon to you, one and all. Today we are here from the MSME and Startup Promotion Board to start with our webinar on importance of cost analysis and process mapping for startups. And our learned speaker is CMA Dr. Jayaram Ramakrishnan sir. Sir, welcome you to this webinar, please, sir.
Thank you.
So today we are having this topic, but before we start, to play the institute's anthem, please.
असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति.
So now I am requesting to our one of the board members, Sri CMA Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay sir, to offer his welcome address for today's webinar. As CMA Suresh Gunjali sir has expressed his inability today because of his preoccupation. That is why we are blessed today that we are having CMA Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay sir for giving his welcome address. Sir, over to you, please.
Yes, make me live. Thank you, CMA Dr. Sumita Chakraborty, Secretary of MSME and Startup Promotion Board. My chairman of this MSME Startup Promotion Board, CMA Suresh Gunjali, and today's speaker, Dr. CMA Jayaram Ramakrishnan, who is a personality always contributing to the profession, our profession, and he is having versatile knowledge on this particular, especially today's topic, which is very important. And I understand that Dr. Jayaram Ramakrishnan will be delving when he's as usually in his own, I should say, with his knowledge, and of course he has got the tremendous exposure of delving on the cost analysis and process mapping for startups. So today's this is the last day of this month of MSME Startup Promotion Startup Celebration Month we are doing, and before I hand over the session to Dr. Jayaraman, our main speaker, I could understand that ultimately at the end of the day, when we are dealing with the MSMEs and startups, the 7 M's framework is very important for MSME and startups. The 7 M's stands for, first one stands for money, which is, as you know, the challenge of MSME startups is limited access to credit, insufficient financial literacy, and as also cash flow issues. Then second, your manpower, that is skill gap, retention, lack of training facilities. Third is your machinery. High capital investment in contemporary machinery is a challenge for the MSMEs and startups. Even restricted technology integration, and maintenance and upgradation of imperatives. That is all. These are also challenges for the MSMEs. And then materials, the price instability, gaps in supply chain, quality assurance standards. These are all challenges so far as the materials are concerned. Then in, of course, management, the deficient management competencies and overextended ownership responsibilities for MSME in startups. These are also challenge, and insufficient succession planning mechanism is also posing challenge to the MSME in startups. And market, this is another aim, that limited reach, lack of brand recognitions, competitive pressure. These are all the challenges of MSMEs and startups. And last, which is also very abstract in nature, but it's a very important, that is motivation. Employee motivation, then entrepreneurial burnout, lack of recognitions. These are all 7 aims actually encompassing the framework of MSMEs. And today's session, definitely I should say, that if we talk about the money, the cost is important. If we talk about the manpower, skill is important. The cost, how you will be doing the cost analysis, this is nothing but a skilling. So therefore, even in material pricing, there also you'll be finding the price instability, gaps in supply chain, quality assurance standards, what I have talked about. These are also definitely having tremendous relevance on the cost analysis and the costing. Therefore, today's cost management is most important, and I think today's session will be a very enriching session for all of us. Our participants are always very much keen to know, and today I must, on behalf of the entire MSME Startup Promotion Board, congratulate all the participants who show their solidarity behind this MSME Startup Promotion Board, and we assure that we shall be continuously looking for more and more such programs for getting more and more updated information from the learned speakers. And of course, I request everybody, every chapter representatives who are here today in this webinar, please associate yourself with all Chamber of Commerce, whether it is MSME Chamber of Commerce, whether it is Corporate Chamber of Commerce, but you please, the local Chamber of Commerce, you please associate, so that the Chamber of Commerce people, they can get more and more, knowledge from us, and we can help them with our expertise, which I think the CMAs are the best player in case of MSMEs returnership and MSMEs efficiency, and most important, the sustainable MSME and startups will be possible if MSME can really take help from the CMAs. With this, I again thank my chairman to give me an opportunity to say a few words on this penultimate day for the MSME Startup Months. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your enlightened session, enlightened welcome speech, which will enlighten us really, all the attendees. So now, before we start the session, I'm handing over the microphone to him, to the learned speaker, CMA Dr. Jayaraman Ramakrishnan sir. A few words about him for the attendees. CMA Dr. Jayaram Ramakrishnan is a professor of practice at IFMR GSB, Kriya University in the finance and accounting area. He is a fellow member of ICMAI and also a qualified MA from CIMA, SEMA, UK. He holds a PhD in costing and brings to the table over 25 years of experience in industry as a manager, senior consultant, and cost auditor. His academic experience spans 18 years and he is a visiting faculty at IIMs in addition to his role as a full-time professor at IFMR. He is also the program director for the Profitability Analytics program for auto industry at IFMR and has conducted over 250 plus programs in the field of management accounting and strategic cost management for various corporates. So over to you, sir. Please enlighten our audiences through your expertise.
We should share the screen, no ma'am. That is better,
Yes.
I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It is visible.
It is visible, sir. Visible.
Namaste and a warm welcome to all fellow members of ICMAI. Would like to thank our chairman Suresh Gunjali sir and also our board member Chittaranjan sir for taking time off from the schedule and giving that warm introduction. And also a special word of thanks to Sumitra ma'am, who has made this meeting possible. And once again, I wish to extend my warm welcome and also extend my pranams to the senior members attending this program. So the topic itself is pretty interesting. It set me thinking, perhaps Chittu sir's, it may have been Chittu sir's idea, I guess, from the way in which it has been worded, which is importance of cost analysis and process mapping for startups. Now, this set me thinking, now, how do I go about this? Startups and costing, like somehow they don't fit. That is based on our experience so far. It is always like they start and then think of costs. So it was a bit tough for me to actually get going on this topic. And I take the liberty at the beginning itself to extend the scope a bit more. Though they have mentioned the term process mapping, I would like to get into value stream mapping and value analysis. I think that would be more appropriate. So with due permission from our MSME board, chairman and Chittu sir, I would like to extend the scope to value stream mapping and cost analysis instead of just process mapping. Why? Reasons I will share shortly, right? So we will just go through the theoretical part first, warm up, I would say, and then get into two practical examples which I have created to discuss on this issue. So what is it that we will be covering? What is process mapping? Different levels of process mapping. What is value stream mapping and value analysis? What is cost analysis? And then what is the scenario vis-a-vis Indian startups and the way ahead? So the startup and MSME portion comes at the end, right? And obviously at the end of this session, hopefully the link between process mapping, value analysis and cost analysis and the relevance to Indian startups would be obvious. So what is process mapping, right? It is a simple visualization technique. It's just a tool wherein the workflow for a manufacturing company, typically the workflow on the shop floor. For a department, a production department, a specific department, what is the workflow involved, right? It just maps the workflows. Normally the thinking is visually, if you are able to show something, it creates a greater impact, right? So it is basically a flow chart or a workflow diagram. And what is the purpose of creating this map? See, whenever a new employee joins, obviously you need to familiarize him with what is happening around, about the nature of his work, what is the process involved in his department. So onboarding of new employees is a typical reason why companies have this process maps. And also, where are the problem areas in the process? Now, at the outset itself, I would like to mention, you need not restrict this to a typical manufacturing scenario. Whatever we discussed today is equally applicable to a service scenario or even support departments within a manufacturing scenario. So it is equally applicable to a project management company. It is equally applicable to an audit firm, to a accounting department. You can to a procurement or sourcing department. So you can equally apply this to anywhere. But we would be focusing on a manufacturing based discussion, right? So one of the purposes is onboarding of new employees, solving recurring issues. After all, if you know, you are able to map, right, what is the process and where the issues crop up, then it becomes easier to solve. Documenting complex workflows. Increasingly, shop floors are becoming more complex given the increase in the variety of the products that are being demanded by customers. So complexity is something which you cannot do away with, right? And giving clarity on responsibility. Who's responsible for what, right? So this is basically process mapping, and what are the levels? As I told, you can prepare a map at the enterprise level covering all the functions. You can prepare it with respect to specific departments and then activities within that department or within the process in a particular department. Then you can also within those maps define individual tasks, like in a department for a process involving multiple activities, who is responsible for what is his role, specific task, and what is the decision point involved there, what are the key decision points in that process, and finally how to execute the process with a high level of consistency. So as you can see from this, there are multiple levels in which process mapping can be done. So for this presentation, I have actually taken a very simple process from a high pressure die casting environment, right? So most of you being from our institute should be familiar with die casting operations. It is basically a metal forming operation. There are two types, hot and cold casting methods. So this is for a cold casting method, let us say, that is a method which is being used for manufacturing aluminum castings, right? So what you can see here is a very simple map for casting of aluminum parts. This is for the die casting operation. Now if you look, there is a pressure die casting department. You have multiple activities like procuring raw material. So inverting of raw material is there. Setting up the tool, the dies are there. Then you have the machine, you have the furnaces, right? You have to melt the metal, then hold the metal, then inject it into the machine. But prior to injecting it into the machine, you injecting it into the mold, which is being held by the machine actually. Prior to doing that, the mold has got to be lubricated. Then metal is injected. Then the part is ejected. And then it is allowed to solidify, and then finishing operations are done. So this is a typical routine in a high pressure die casting environment. So what you are seeing here is a process map for that, right? We can stop here with respect to process maps for now. So basically you are having a visual map of what happens in a casting department. Now from here we are, as I told, extending it a bit more, getting into value stream mapping. So what is value stream mapping? It is a lean management tool. Again, something which is very familiar to most of our members and people who have worked in a manufacturing environment. They would have at some point in their career being exposed to this. Generally, this exercise is undertaken typically by some Japanese san in various companies. So you can find starting at one end, a number of color papers, charts, and cards are used to map the process end to end, right from supplier end up to delivery to customer, right? Yeah, flow is prepared. They call it Kanban cards are used, color codes, color cards are used, and the employees are asked to map all the activities involved right from supplier end up to delivery to customer. Now, how is it different from a process map is something which we have to think about, right? Process map also represents, and you can have at business level, at plant level, at various levels you can have. But how is this different? So steps again, right? The difference is primarily, see, process map is documentation of as-is scenario. Whereas in value stream mapping, what you do is you look at activities, you classify them further into what are value adding and non-value added activities. Of course, there are some activities which we call the gray area. There are some which are pure non-value adding, some which are pure value adding, and there are some which are neither. You cannot classify them as either value adding or non-value. We call them gray activities, right? For example, inspecting one part after producing every 100 parts. It may be non-value adding from a customer perspective, a quality check, but then it is essential. If you do not do that, then you reject the entire lot, then it definitely is going to cost you more. So no, this is a gray area. Our own activity, if you ask me, accounting, value adding or non-value adding, the answer is non-value adding. But then we are essential non-value added activities. Otherwise, the company cannot exist. So this classification into value add and non-value add is something which is a potential area for conflict amongst departments. But then the purpose is not to encourage conflict. The purpose is ultimately look at the cost of performing the activities and eliminate non-value added activities, thereby improving your bottom line and ability to serve the customer more. That is the idea behind the entire exercise. So what do we do in value stream mapping? We basically look at the various activities, right? We analyze the activities, classify them according to these three, and then we identify what is it that drives the cost of performing these activities. That is very important, right? What is the cost driver for these activities? Underlying reason for these activities, right? So that is the area where costing comes into play, and we will be looking at it shortly. So what is the objective of this? Improve the ability to profitably serve customers. That is very important, because end of the day, for the startup or MSME to survive, it needs to start making profits. And a value analysis exercise is invariably followed by an increase in market share and significant ROI. We'll look at it shortly, how it improves capacity, how it reduces cost, and thereby increases your return on investment. Now, the final part of the theoretical discussion is cost analysis, right? So cost analysis is the key to cost reduction in two ways. One, see, when we do this value stream mapping or process mapping and then analysis, which area to target first? We have to obviously look at the low hanging fruit, right? That is where the greatest potential for reduction is there. So first of all, purpose of doing the cost analysis is to identify the activities that offer the greatest potential for cost reduction. The second is, this is very important in today's scenario, by doing this, you would be in a position to simulate various scenarios. What happens if I reduce my cycle time? What happens if I reduce my throughput time? What is the impact on inventory? What would be the impact of reduction in lead times? What would be the impact of reduction in changeover times? So this sort of a what if analysis, a simulation, simulating the impact on cost. This is very critical in today's environment, highly competitive environment. So where to target and what would be the impact? Simulation, right? This is the purpose of performing cost analysis. Otherwise, it's not for inventory valuation. That is always there. Your inventory and reporting to banks, reporting to statutory. That is not what we as management accountants need to focus. Our focus should be on adding value through this cost analysis and value stream mapping. So with this, we will come to startups and the issues facing them. I will just take you through two small examples aligned with this topic. Now, Ma'am, is the Excel visible, ma'am? Ma'am, Sumitra ma'am? Sumitra ma'am, is the Excel visible?
Yes, sir. You are completely visible. Yes, sir.
Okay.
You are visible, sir.
Okay. So, hope the Excel sheet is visible. This is a small value stream map that I had created for a typical assembly part supplier to a OEM. This is the case of a simple tier 1 supplier to a OEM in auto industry, right? So what do you see here? So there is a forecast given by the customer, and the MRP team or the production control team of the manufacturer, he converts it into a production plan and conveys it to the suppliers, right? This production plan is then broken down into quarterly, monthly, and weekly schedules. And the supplier starts supplying against these schedules. So in this case, I have taken an assembled casting. So what are the processes involved? If you look at, you have die casting process, which is in-house to this company. Then this goes out for shot blasting, which is surface finishing, right? It goes out to a subcontractor, then it comes back and then goes for further value addition within the company. You have machining operations. Then it goes to assembly. And from assembly, it is shipped to a domestic customer. And you find the timelines here, and you also find the schedules. So there is a weekly schedule being given to the supplier against which the supplier supplies. So normally it takes 4 days for the materials to reach. So now, once materials are there, it is in stock. The company is maintaining approximately about 5 days stock, okay, of materials. Now it goes to process. The first process, value add from company side, casting, which is what we saw. Now it takes 60 seconds or a minute for a casting to be made. And what is given is, for making a particular product, on an average, the setup time in the machine. See, I have to remove the mold for the previous product, clean, then put the mold for the new product, that is this product, then check and then start manufacturing. So this setup takes about 3 hours, 180 minutes. And the machine has a overall equipment utilization of 70%, right? But please remember, the actual operation to produce one casting is only 60 seconds, just a minute. Now it goes out after production, it goes to stores, and from there to the subcontractor. Now moving it to the subcontractor, him finishing this job and then returning it back to our shop floor or our stores, right? This takes about 2 days. Again, what is the time on an average per piece? Just 1 minute. Shot blasting is a batch. It's not a piece work. It is a batch level operation. Therefore, perhaps 60 castings in a batch, I believe. Therefore, I have assumed 1 minute again for shot blasting, right? That is the time in which value is added, but it takes 2 days, right? So having come back as shot blasted casting, it spends, that is again stock of all this in my stores. Then it goes to machine shop. And in machine shop, the product spends 20 minutes. That is the shot blasted casting. It spends 20 minutes in the shop floor. Now again, in machine shop, I have a manufacturing line that manufactures multiple products in the same line. So any line which is not dedicated, right, manufactures multiple, then what happens? You have to obviously change the setup, change the tooling. So when I have to go for a changeover from one product to another, again for this product, I need 30 minutes of setup time, and my utilization OE is 65% in machine shop. Now, after machining, it lies as machined casting for a couple of days on an average, and then goes to assembly shop. And in assembly, there is a dedicated line, right? So dedicated for this product. So again, 14 minutes is spent on the line, right? And you find very high OEE because the line is a dedicated line. And then it is shipped to the customer. Generally, this company, this example, they used to assemble only when they had to ship. And shipping happened almost daily. You can see here, there is a daily schedule for this customer. Okay. There is a daily schedule for assembly. Whereas for machine shop, for shot blasting and for die casting, it is a weekly schedule. So every piece of information is important, right? And it goes to the customer, and it takes 7 days to move it to the customer end. Now, what are the, this is the value stream map for a particular assembled casting in a particular shop floor, or sorry, in a particular plant, right? Now, how is it relevant to our discussion? What are the points that we can glean from this? If you see here, overall, for this exercise, right from receipt, from informing supplier and receiving to delivering to customer, it takes 18 days, right? Now, this is what we call as lead time. Supplier to customer time is lead time. It takes 18 days. But you have this concept of throughput time in continuous manufacturing. What is throughput? Throughput is the time that is spent from, in this case, from pressure die casting to assembly. What is the time spent? If you take that, time is 7 days, right? But now to the important point. What is the value add time here for which the customer is actually paying you? He is paying you only for the 36 minutes. What is the 36? Which is 1 minute in casting, 1 minute in shot blasting, 20 minutes in machining, and 14 minutes in assembly. So, what does this analysis tell you? That 36 minutes is what I spend on real value addition for which the customer pays. Whereas the time spent by the product on the line is 7 days. And for an entire exercise to happen, it takes 18 days. So what is it that we glean from this? The challenge for an MSME, for a young startup company operating in this domain, let us say foundry or casting domain, right, which is already squeezed for margins. It's a very tough area to operate in, which is why I have chosen this area for discussion today. Right? Unlike the service sector, this is a highly competitive, very tough area to work in. And there are huge number of companies in this domain, hundreds of them in the MSME and startup area in this sector. Right? So the challenge before the entrepreneur is this ratio between value addition to throughput, value addition to lead time. This has got to be constantly focused upon and reduced. The difference now, how do we yes, so we have 7 days. The next question that is logically posed is, can we reduce it to 5 days or 3 days? If so, what are the means? Right? Can I, for example, invest in a shot blasting machine? And see, today Most of them tell non-core areas, please outsource. That is a common advice given. But in this case, right, if I am able to, for example, do this operation in-house, what happens? 2 days of movement is avoided. Second, that much of work, right, in issuing, in tracking, in GST compliance for subcontracting, right, all that is avoided. See, many a time the benefits, one of the headache areas for startups is also compliance. It's a big headache in India, despite all the talk of ease of doing business, especially this outsourcing, right, movement. All of this leads to a lot of paperwork. What is obvious is we are saving 2 days. But what is not so easily visible is all the compliance associated work, all the planning effort involved, all the follow-ups involved, receiving, inspecting, all of this can be avoided if, for example, this is done in-house, provided, as Chittu sir told, you have capital M, which is money, and you can invest in a machine to do this job instead of outsourcing it. The next thing is, if we look at this, why is it spending 2 days in stock? Why is this spending 3 days in stock? Why again 2 days here? Can we not reduce this? This would be the next question, right? A further analysis at the customer end. If you look at the product customer combination, it might lead to, I haven't put any data here, it might lead to you questioning, does the volume justify a daily schedule, right? If volume justifies, yes. If the volume just doesn't justify, right, then can I go for a weekly schedule or bi-weekly schedule in planning? It saves a lot of support effort again, right? The next question is, my customer wants just-in-time delivery. No problem, because customer is king, we have got to accept that. But instead of shipping it daily to customer, can I open a warehouse near the customer, accumulate different parts, and then supply on just-in-time from there? See, the analysis is only this, but then the kind of questions it throws, and then you look at alternatives. Now, why are we looking at all this? End of the day, we have to remember all of this is fine, but then to ultimately decide on a course of action, I need to back this up with cost data. So what is the cost impact of a reduction, right, in cycle time? What is the cost impact, WIP saving, work in progress, or SFG, semi-finished goods saving, because of reducing the number of days? What is the impact on my resource consumption if I do the job in-house instead of outsourcing it? Not only in terms of the movement, but also associated resource cost on side of procurement, on the side of quality. These are all things on the side of accounting, complying. All these are resources, right? So, see, doing a VSM, doing a process map without putting a cost figure against it, it does no good, right? This is something which most companies do. Forget the MSME startups, even the bigger ones. Many a company, in my humble experience, they have gone for lean programs, right? TPM, TQM, huge number of initiatives, Kaizen, lean, right? Strategic business units. But ultimately, very few were in a position to quantify the impact, right, of all these initiatives on the bottom line. So that is something which startups and MSMEs always have to keep an eye on. All this is fine, but these are only a means to an end. The end is your business has to be run profitably. Your business has to be there for 5 years. before you even think of going for an IPO, before you think of looking at a profitable buyer, right? Potential buyer, not profitable buyer, right? So these are all things which they have got to keep in mind. So that brings us, right, to the need for a costing system and need for simulating. See, I need to simulate, no? If I reduce the throughput from 7 to 3 days, what is the cost impact? How can I do it without a costing system first in place? A costing system which is able to measure cost in terms of activities done, not in terms of your traditional cost center accounting and inventory valuation, right? So you all can understand by now where I am pushing to, activity-based costing, which happens to be my favorite area. But then, after all, it is also the most logical approach to cost management. Another example. So this is just one example. Endless possibilities are there. If you first map everything into a value stream like this, and then start questioning and focusing on targeted reduction, it offers you endless possibilities. Now, I told you have to simulate and see. So I am going back to the process map. I am going back to a pressure die casting operation, right? So I have created a small example. Again, the possibilities are endless, but I am restricting myself to a small example. I know it's a bit difficult looking at it online and then understanding, but I will try my best. So there are two scenarios. One is existing, which has been captured by my costing system. And then I have a post improvement scenario. This is my simulation. This is nothing but simulation, right? What are the possibilities first? Now, this is again for a particular process, high pressure die casting process. And in that, in a particular machine, right? For a particular process, a particular machine. Now, there are certain assumptions. This machine expected to work 3 shifts, 8 hours per shift, 25 days in a month. So many hours, so many minutes, then there are breaks, okay? And effectively, the machine, the planned hours for the machine is 525 in a month, 3 shift basis, right? Now, once I collect data on the machine, right, I find that the machine was down for 125 hours during the month. So my operating time planned is 525, whereas my operating time is only 400. I have lost 125 hours. Now, die changeover is something which I cannot avoid, but I can definitely improve upon, right? Breakdown is something which I can definitely avoid if I have a wise preventive and predictive maintenance plan in place. So we'll come to that later. Okay, but for the moment, I find 400 is my effective operating time. Now, in simulation, what I do, what if I am able to reduce this downtime from 125 to 50 hours? So huge reduction, right? But through targeted activities, I am able to reduce. Then what happens? We will park it aside for the moment. So that is one part. Now come to the run rate. Run rate is the performance efficiency of the machine itself, right? So I have assumed that each part takes 1 minute. Okay. So for the hours that it is planning to be used, it can effectively manufacture 24,000 pieces of the part. But actually, I see it has done only 21,600, right? So what happens is, see, I expect a part to come out of the machine every minute, but then somehow it's after all like man, machines also sometimes face efficiency issues, right? So though I have planned, it has worked at 90% efficiency. Various issues crop up, fluctuation in power, right? Some small issues. So 90%. So I have ended up manufacturing 21,600, right? And then on top of it, to my utter horror, I find that in this 21,600, there is a rejection of 3,600, right? So 17% rejection happens. So my quality is 83%. Now, if I take this combined effect of downtime, performance, and quality, I end up with a overall efficiency of 57%. So we all know what the Japanese tell. They expect the OEE to be 85 for you to be classified as a world-class company. 75% itself is considered very good, practically. 85 is world-class. 75 is something which companies can definitely focus. More so, small and medium enterprises, right? So because for them, each 1% means huge in terms of financial resources. Now, what happens here? What are the possibilities, right? Which I need to simulate. So I look at this downtime, why there are breakdowns, how I can address it during the off days. After all, it's working for 25 days, right? So I am improving maintenance. But more importantly, what is the low hanging fruit here? See, this as a rule, any cost reduction exercise, what is important is the low hanging fruit means that which gives you maximum. And our experience tells that it is batch level and product level activities that give maximum benefit in terms of cost, rather than focusing on unit level, which is reducing cycle time by 10%. No, focus on batch, which means focus on die changeover, right? Now, what happens if I am reducing from 125 to 50 hours? My availability increases to 90%. Let us keep it aside. Then what happens if I improve efficiency by 5%? Similarly, if I am able to focus on quality issues and reduce my rejections from 17 to 10%, so 90% good quality I have. Look at the overall OE. From 57, it has gone up to 77 through these three initiatives. Now, the question is, what would be the impact on cost? All this is fine, sir, but what would be the impact on cost? There are impacts at various levels, right? But one impact I am just simulating and showing. Just observe. So what has been done here is a costing system is in place, and I have also managed to classify my costs into variable and fixed, and we have identified the costs of various resources, right? You can see here. So the cost of operating is 4 lakhs. Machine hours actual we have effectively worked for is only 300 hours, right? Which is planned production time of 525 into OEE of 57. Derived machine hours. Look at my machine hour rate. It is 1,333, right? And the per part cost, assuming multiple models are manufactured with the same cycle time, no major difference in time, right? The conversion cost is 22 rupees. Okay. Now, if I am able to improve my efficiency to 77, look at the machine hours. Instead of 300, now available hours for which I could have used, I have used. This is simulation. This is the simulation part, and one part only I am telling. It has increased to 406. What would be the cost impact? My variable cost will vary in proportion to the time, but my fixed cost will continue to remain the same. The fixed cost would be spread over greater number of hours, greater number of units produced as a result of greater availability, right? Now my machine hour rate instead of 1,333, it has reduced to 1,185. And what would be the impact on cost per part? You find almost 10% reduction in the cost, right? So the key is, see, this is only one aspect, right? This is just one aspect, which is greater utilization, less rejection, and therefore fall in conversion cost. But if you actually break it down at activity level, right, a number of insights you can have. For example, which product has higher batch volume and lesser changeovers? Which product has more changeovers but low batch volume? Which product takes more time in setting up, in changeover itself? No, which one will I focus? That product with a higher time and a lower batch quantity. That is what I should focus for reducing changeover, right? The cost of changeover. That is one insight. Then, where do I get rejections? Which models rejection is more? What are the underlying reasons? Is it because of design problems? Is it because of other issues? Right? So this way I keep on drilling, getting into reasons, and then converting it into a cost figure. That is the key, right? So this way, this is simulating. What happens if I reduce, if I improve? What is the cost impact? This way, the system, a startup, an MSME startup in particular, should have a system in place to simulate and see. That is the purpose of cost analysis, what we saw here, right? Find opportunities with the greatest potential. In this case, we saw setup is where, changeover is where the potential is there, rejection is where it is there. Then simulating the impact, right, for cost reduction. We have to remember it is not the product that costs. It is the activities that you perform that results in the cost for a product. Greater efficiency, lesser the cost. More elimination of non-value added activities, lesser the cost. Product is same, right? Whether you run for 300 or 406 hours. But by running for 406 hours, you are managing to reduce the cost. That is the key insight that we should have. Now come to Indian startups. What is the scenario today? Obviously, startups, huge number of them are coming up. But the problem, Chittu sir also said this, his 7 M's was very enlightening. Now, the focus, because it's all mostly owner driven, the focus is on revenue generation, which is fine. But then revenue without profitability is a waste. What you have to look at is a scenario of profitable sales. Just improving the top line, bottom line will take care of. This was the thinking about a couple of decades ago. No, it has been repeatedly proven to be wrong, right? Then one of the biggest problem for startups is it starts with lot of fanfare, right? They give a damn about the costs. And if you see, most of the high paid jobs are also in startups only nowadays, sir, right? They enjoy, then suddenly find themselves in a winding up scenario, no takers, which is why if you see the statistics for Indian startups, 90% of them have found to be floundering at some stage within 5 years, 10% not even beyond the first year, 70% within 5 years, right? So what is the reason for this? Failure to understand the cost model for your business. Your deep understanding of cost is required from the first day. Revenue, yes, but what are the associated costs, which is something which startups have got to focus upon. So how do we implement this process mapping, VSM, and cost analysis for startups? On the process mapping side, right? Start with identify your critical processes, your bottlenecks. Please map them out. Be clear. This is where our entire operation depends upon, right? Like what we see in TOC, theory of constraints. VSM and TOC gel perfectly. They can be perfect complement to each other. So start with your critical bottleneck processes. Conduct a thorough cost analysis. Now this means it presupposes that you have a good financial and cost accounting system in place. Do not start a business and then think of costs, right? Investing in a good accounting and costing system is the key. It is an investment. It is not an expense, please. Most startups, they think it is an expense. Oh, we have to spend on this. Oh, we have to spend on that. No, investing in a good accounting and costing system with capable hands. You can outsource that to a third party. That is fine. Capable fellow, or take your own employee. But then invest in a good accounting and costing system. Costing system presupposes not only cost side, it involves a comprehensive data capturing system in place, because costing requires two sets of inputs. One is the accounting data, the other is the operations data. And by operations, I mean the extended value chain, right from supplier to customer. Huge amount of data is required for a scientific costing system. So using this system, which you have already put in place, please conduct a thorough, detailed cost analysis and identify the integration points. See, identifying, very important. Where is it that we have to focus for cost reduction? Where is it that it is intertwined? And then implement, for example, changeover strategy, supply chain strategy. Do I stock up and then distribute, or do I take it directly to a customer? Low volume, tough customer, understanding customer, high volume. Your approach differs. Similarly with supplier. Do I go for JIT? Do I go for batch volumes? Do I go for weekly? Do I go for daily? These are all things we have to think of, right? So then apply this. Now, what is the problem in a typical startup scenario? First of all, owners, they might lack this thinking. Even the employees, see, many startups I have found they enjoy life, especially in the first year. I should not be saying this, but then employees chill out in the first year, as they tell, then start grappling with issues, right? Because when they start, it's about a great idea. And it's about funding being there. Some venture capitalists has funded, they are flush to start with. Then worries start creeping in. And when worries start and somebody tells you have to do this, that, then there is a resistance to change. So that is something we have to work upon. Second appalling fact is there is lack of data. This is not restricted to startups. It is equally applicable across companies. Service sectors, their own problems they have. Manufacturing, they capture, but they lack awareness that this data can be used for cost management. In service, even that capturing is not there, which is why most banks today, where activity-based costing, for example, would be great, unfortunately do not have activity-based costing system, right? So lack of data. Unless you capture, unless you measure something, you cannot manage it. And there is appalling lack of data in most of these startups. Resource constraints, obviously, they cannot invest in too many machines. They cannot invest beyond a certain level in people, right? Because they are already constrained for resources, more so for MSMEs, right? So what is the solution, right? You have got to start small and then scale up, right? And one of the ways of scaling up is automation. And this need not be some great automation. Forget about manufacturing. Even consider procure to pay process. Recently, I did one project with one of my students.
Timing is a constraint because.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just closing, ma'am. I'm just closing, right? In a procure to pay process. So I was astounded just by monitoring and refining the way in which it was done. 40% resource was saved in a simple procure to pay process, and this is not a small company. This is a 1 lakh crore company. So automation is the key. Software tools, today you have a number of open source softwares. There are good softwares for process management, for cost tracking, right? So startups definitely, as I told, it is an investment. And the parting mantra is, as I told, start small, focus on key areas, and leverage on technology wherever it is feasible. So with this, I would like to end my presentation. Again, grateful to the MSME chairman, Chittaranjan sir, Sumitra ma'am and team for giving me the opportunity to make this
Sir,
presentation.
there is a question raised by one Santosh Sharma. He
Yes,
has
ma'am.
raised that when building initial process maps for a startup, how detailed should we get, especially when resources and teams are still evolving?
Yes, sir. I'll just go back to the content for a moment. So if you see here, sir, at the start itself, I mentioned that process maps, there are various levels, right? At the outset, you can have only a overall map, sir, right? As owner, it is your, you start this exercise, right? But then you form the teams, then encourage the teams to prepare their own department specific process maps, right? Then it's a exercise. See, instead of being on the job always, you always take people out, make them, it's like our quality circle that you see in manufacturing. Spend some time outside it, makes you think about the process, right? Then ask them to take the initiative. So once you have the overall enterprise process, then you have the department level. Then within department, you can get into details. The manager of a particular department, he can hit this exercise, right? Then once the interest is sparked, then automatically the employees themselves, they can be encouraged to go for level 4 and 5. It is a very interesting exercise, sir. In fact, when I was working in a company which had already had almost 40 years of existence, people took to it like fish to water. So much of interest was evinced because there's something which is very obvious, which the Japanese regularly do, but when something which we have not given time to. So definitely this can be done, sir. But as I told, start at level 1, then slowly drill down. Do not stop with process mapping. What is more important is value stream mapping. Process mapping is just the beginning, sir. Any other questions, ma'am?
No, sir, actually, we are running out of the time also because the other board is also having some program, webinar.
Okay.
So thank you for your sharing your such a knowledgeable and such a nice presentation, sir. Personally, I have also enjoyed with the attendees. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for joining our board. Okay, sir. So we are leaving, sir. Namaste, sir.
Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.